Hello students, today in geography we'll be looking at the contour representation of relief forms. In our previous slides we talked about relief forms. We also talked about the features of relief forms. Today we'll be looking at how these relief forms are represented on a topographical map. Let's look at contour lines. Contour lines are lines drawn to join places of equal height, level or altitude. The sea level is taken as a starting point in all measurements in meters or feet. Contours have intervals. A contour interval is the difference between one contour and the next contour line. Valley. Valley bottoms are represented by U or V-shaped contour lines with the closed end pointing up. This is how valley is represented. This is a valley. This is how valley is represented on a topographical map. This is another valley. This is how valleys are represented on a topographical map. And the shape is like a V or a U shape, and the pointed end, the closed end, points up. That's how valley is represented on a topographical map. Let's look at another feature, the spur. A spur is a sloping ridge that runs down to a lower elevation, typically to a creek or a river. On a topographical map, it appears as a series of U or V contour lines pointing away from higher ground. Look at this. This is a spur on this map, and if you look at it, you see that these are series of V's or U's. The lines here are, look at them, they are in V or U shape, pointing away from the higher ground. Look at it here too, series of V's or U. So that's the difference between the spur, not the difference between the spur and the valley. Another feature we'll be looking at is the conical hill. A conical hill is a natural elevation of Earth's surface, smaller than a mountain. Its base is broad and almost circular in shape and has a narrow peak. Contours showing conical hills are almost circular with the peak of the hill as their center. This is the peak of the hill. So this is how the peak of the hill is represented on a topographical map. The center is circular, almost circular in shape. Now this is the base, and that's the base of the conical hill. This is how a conical hill is represented on a topographical map. Let's look at another feature, the round top hill. The round top hill is shown on a map by contour lines forming concentric circles. The inside of the smallest closed circle is the hill top. That's the inside. If you look at this picture very well, this image is not too clear. The inside is the hill top. This is how the round top hill is represented on a topographical map. Generally it is generally smaller and rounder than a mountain, and it is less steep. This is what a conical hill looks like naturally, and this site is represented on a topographical map. Isolated hill. In hilly areas, the contour lines are close together while they are wider apart on flat surfaces. The closer the contour lines, the steeper the slope. The wider the contour lines, the flatter the slope. Look at it. This is an isolated hill. This image here is an isolated hill. It is standing. This is how a hill is represented. When these lines are close together, it means that the slope of this hill is more steep. But when they are wider apart, the slope is gentle. Now, on a hill, the contour lines form circles whereby the values of their elevation increases from the edge to the center. This is an isolated hill. It's a standalone hill. That's why it's called isolated hill. That's standalone hill. Now, look at a clustered hill. This is a hill. This is another hill beside it. So it's not standing alone. That's what differentiates an isolated hill from a clustered hill. This one is alone on its own. There's no hill beside it. But here we have another hill beside it. That's the difference between an isolated hill or that's what's an isolated hill to other hills. Knoll. A knoll is an isolated peak of few meters high associated with a highland. This is a knoll, and a knoll is associated with a highland. Look at this 407. The knoll, this is what a knoll looks like, and it's mostly found on highlands. It looks similar like a ridge, but it's not a ridge. A ridge is a strip of highland which is elongated and narrow. On a map, a ridge is depicted as two contour lines, often of the same color, running side by side at the same elevation for some distance. When the lines diverge, The ridge is either flattening out to a higher plateau, or the contour line or continues to rise with additional contour lines. Now let's look at what a ridge looks at on a topographical map. This is a ridge, and look at the lines are flattening away. The lines are flattening away, they are diverging to either a highland or to another structure. Now let's look at another feature, the col or saddle. A col is a low point between two sections with higher elevation. A col is always a pass or a gap, but a gap or a pass is not always a col. Now these are two highlands here. This is a highland, it's a mountain. This is another highland. Then the pass between them, most times a col or a saddle is used as footpaths or roads. So the pass or the col or a saddle is a lowland. It's a lowland, a low point between two highlands. These are two highlands. Then the distance, the distance and the path between them is what we call a col or saddle. Now let's look at a pass or a gap. A pass separates two highlands but at lower level. A pass is always a col, but a col is not a pass. These are two highlands. This is a highland, this is another highland. Then this is the pass between them. If you look at our previous slides where we talked about the features of how these features appear physically, you understand you understand a pass better. Now the plateau. The contour lines representing a plateau are normally close spaced at the margins. These are the margins, and they are close spaced at the margins. The contour lines are close spaced at the margins. Then, with the innermost contours showing a wide gap between the two sides, this innermost contour line, and there's a wide gap between the two sides. This is how a plateau is represented on a topographic map. Escarpment or cuesta. An escarpment is a steep slope or long cliff that forms as a result of faulting or erosion and separates two relatively low lands. This is a scarp. This is how a scarp is represented on a topographical map. If you look at this one now, the lines are close together, showing that the steep is gentle. But here the lines are wider, far apart, showing that the steep is very sharp, just like what we have here. This is how an escarpment is shown. It is like as if it was this place, this portion of the land was cut off with something. So the steep is very sharp. That is how it is. A scarp is represented on a topographical map. The gorge. A gorge is represented by very close spaced contour lines on a map, with the innermost contour line showing small gap between its two sides. A tongue of land projecting from higher ground into the lower is called a spur. It's also represented by a V-shaped contour, but in the reverse manner. This is how a gorge is represented on a topographical map. If you look at the contour lines, they are close spaced, and it somehow looks like a valley or a spur, but not the difference between them. These lines are close spaced, unlike the spur or the valley. Then the next one is undulating lowland. For an undulating lowland, the lowland gently rises and falls with low level, and is usually shown by irregular or wave-spaced contours. For the undulating line, the lines looks like a wave. Look at how an undulating line, lowland, is represented on a topographical map. It's usually shown by irregular or wave-spaced contour. And you see how it is looking. Now let's talk about the last one, the watershed. A watershed is usually represented by a dashed line or shaded area on the map. The watershed boundary represents the geographic area that drains into a particular body of water, such as a river, a lake, or a ocean. This is the watershed, the saddle. This is the watershed. This is a saddle, a pass. But here, this is where these are lowlands, and between them have a saddle. And this, where we have the saddle, is where this water is collected, is the watershed. Water from these two lowlands, water that is coming from this lowland and this lowland, is collecting into this drainage. It's collecting into this part, and this drainage or this pass can be a river, can be a lake, or it can be an ocean, and it is moving away. The river is flowing, the watershed is flowing away from this angle, and this angle is moving away from this angle and this angle. So when you see this type of feature on a topographic map, you understand that this is a watershed and not just an ordinary gap or pass or col. This brings us to the end of this discussion today on how relief forms are represented on a topographic map. Let's look at the assessment section. How is a watershed represented on a map? Question number 2. How is a valley represented on a map? Drop your answer in the comment section. That will be all for today. Thank you for watching and join us in our next demo.